Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back for another chapter read of Shattered Dreams. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button as we finish out this week's chapter reading. So we are on chapter 29. In April 1968, at the age of 38, Verlin came home from a church conference held in Colonia LeBaron. He had that certain glint in his eyes. "I have wonderful news to tell you," he said. After the final meeting at the conference, Brother Ray asked to talk privately with me. His 14-year-old daughter, Susan, wants to marry me. I cannot be okay at any point with a grown behind man. I don't care if he was 18, marrying a 14-year-old. It's so inappropriate, so vile, so predatory that it bothers me. And he's asking her, what do you feel about me not only adding another wife, but me adding this little girl who's probably the age of some of our kids, maybe even younger than some of them. We'll see. What do you think about that, Irene? I was stunned. Verlin, she's too young. Why, she's only 2 years older than our own daughter, Donna. He thought of that and quickly answered, so it's got to be from God, Irene. Who else at that age would even consider me? Okay. Verlin, I want to marry you too. Verlin, where you at? I don't, but I'm just saying, because someone says they want to do something, that doesn't mean it has to be from God. It's what he wants. Y'all putting the wrong stuff on God. I don't like that. This is a blessing straight from heaven. Suzanne will be such an asset to our kingdom. Come on, Irene, please don't cry. How could I help it? I was now 31 and my looks were fading. Whether he thought so or not, Suzanne was a tremendous threat to me, her beauty, her youth. Mostly, I was sick and tired of sharing the one and only man for whom I'd given my whole life. I felt jealous, hateful, and thoroughly uncooperative. I coped all these years struggling just to survive, and now he was marrying one of Donna's friends for me to compete with. I really feel like this lifestyle ages these women. Because look at the sister wives and how, since some of them have left Mr. Bald Eagle himself, how good they look, how much younger they look. And here she is young and she's feeling like she's worn down at the young age that she is. She's in her 30s. Verlin grew more concerned because he could see my depression deepening. Please don't look so sad. You know I've never courted anyone, have I? Somehow, God just sent each of you to me. Please don't give me problems, Irene. I've got to have you stand behind me. I wonder how many other people he said that to. How many other wives did you have to say that same thing to? He wrapped my sobbing body in his arms. Oh, honey, don't get silly ideas. This won't change the way I feel about you one bit. Please give me your permission. It's so manipulative. It's like all these men and all these books that we've read, only one so far, Joe Duggar, hasn't seemed to manipulate his women. And I don't know if it's an act because he got some stuff with him too. But I'm just saying, all of these books, it's the same cycle over and over again. Our circumstances were worse than ever, but I'd sworn to take this man for better or for worse. What else could I say? It's up to you, Verlin, I said half-heartedly. During the following months, though I was reluctant, it was gratifying to be doing my duty and seeing Verlin happy. Suzanne came from Chihuahua to visit. At least she got to see what she was getting herself into. And for some unknown reason, I found I liked her. Because she's like a kid and maybe you thought she was like one of your daughters. Just my guess. They decided to be married in October at our church's next general conference in Colonia LeBaron. By then, she'd be 15. When the time approached, Verlin began making the required arrangements. Which wife would get the traditional privilege of placing Suzanne's right hand in his? Esther was still in Los Molinos. Charlotte and Lucy were off at their jobs in San Diego. It was easy for his fourth wife, Beverly, to make her choice. She would rather tend all the kids by herself than give Verlin to a new wife. She wanted no part of it. I'd been begging for a vacation ever since Dr. Martinez prescribed it. This would be at my chance. I desperately needed a few days' rest. My need was so urgent, I decided to attend my own husband's wedding to get it. Verlin planned to go straight from there to San Diego. Harold Tibbetts gladly offered to drive me in his big green commercial truck, but he explained, "You'll have to ride the 20 hours in the back with all the other members who are going to the conference." I fought morning sickness as the truck jolted along the dirt roads. With 18 others all crowded together, I kept to the very back to relieve my claustrophobia and be where I could throw up. I was so glad when that trip was over. I gratefully showered at my mother-in-law's house once we got to Colonial LeBaron. Then I flopped wearily into bed. Verlin arrived the following morning as planned. Preparations were made for him to marry Suzanne 2 days later, right after the last service of Sunday's conference. In the meantime, I didn't get to see much of him because he had to attend so many meetings. Though he slept with me, he was up by 6 a.m. and didn't get back into bed until past midnight. I look forward to spending time with him, but if I wanted to see him, it was either at conference meetings or after he'd fallen asleep. So at night, I lied quietly and watched him sleep, as I'd done so many other times over the years. It was a sad ritual only a plural wife can really comprehend. Early Sunday morning, Verlin told me to wash out 2 changes of his clothes and repack his suitcase. With his briefcase in hand, he came back to where I was still in bed. "I want to leave tonight, immediately after the wedding. Irene, I sure love and appreciate you. I'll see you tonight." And out the door he went. I heard Suzanne would be wearing a traditional white wedding gown she had borrowed from someone. Verlin had his usual gray suit. I only had one good dress that still fitted all. A red and black checkered cotton sack dress I selected from the cast-off of clothes Verlin hauled from Vegas. I was pregnant with my 11th child, and my tummy bulged at the buttons down the front of the dress, but I would try to remember to hold it in during the ceremony. I tried not to think selfish thoughts. For months, I've been begging Verlin for some desperately needed maternity clothes. I knew the money Verlin would spend on his honeymoon with Suzanne could dress me like a queen. I felt sick and out of place in my cheap, ill-fitting outfit. Imagine not having a decent thing to wear to my own husband's wedding. Verlin should have made sure that he at least got her something that could fit. Like, what does he do? The men are really required not to do anything when it comes to their wives, except bed them. Imagine not having a decent thing to wear. Under the circumstances, such thoughts hardly even made me smile. Verlin was now president of the Church of the Firstborn. That's why most of his family and friends at the conference he heard about his impending marriage to Suzanne. Several of them shook my hand, congratulating me on my sister wife-to-be. Enviously, an elder brother, Joseph Parsons, said to me, "How lucky you are, while she'll be a beautiful flower in Verlin's heavenly bouquet." I thought a cactus might describe her better, but I had to guard Verlin's image. It was required of me. I hung an artificial smile on my face and endeavored to set a good example for the other women. During the closing hymn of conference, I gave myself a good talking to. Don't goof things up for him. For heaven's sake, don't cry. And no matter what, stay until the reception is over. I hadn't given Verlin a wife for 14 years since Lucy, and that was a catastrophe. Since that time, he married his 2 Mexican wives, Beverly and Esther. I wasn't present for either of them, though I'd given my consent after a fashion. Maybe God would forgive me for the terrible way I acted at Lucy's wedding if I willingly gave Suzanne to Verlin. Yes, I was sure this would make up for it. Back then, I was devastated and brokenhearted, but I at least had a little comfort knowing Lucy probably wouldn't get any sex except for procreation purposes. I shook my head regretfully. I was the one who convinced Verlin to fulfill my sexual needs. I looked at 15-year-old Suzanne, a mere child, and I shrugged. I was ready to give her to my husband so he could fulfill hers. I thank God. At least Suzanne was pretty and smart. Every other man in the group would have given his eye teeth to have her. I tried warming to Verlin's new marriage by recognizing that Suzanne would put him just one wife away from the quorum of 7 he'd always wanted. I needed someone to hold my hand, though, through this trial, so I went to my good friend Linda, who was the town midwife. We hurried down the gravel road toward the Wakeham's home, where the wedding was to be held. I was surprised at the large living room. It was about 20 by 30 feet, with an extended area that opened into an even larger kitchen. It would accommodate 50 to 70 guests if we crowded close together. By this time, it was well known that colonial LeBaron was a polygamous community, and the LeBarons were openly proclaiming polygamy as a tenet of their religion. No one worried about the law interfering because the Mexican officials only intervened if a person involved in it made an accusation of wrongdoing. That's why all of Verlin's wives after me got to invite guests to their weddings and otherwise do all the same things any other bride and groom did on their wedding day. None of them had to slink around looking for a secluded park to be married in or hide her marriage from everyone she loved. Linda sat down on the first wooden chair, so many lining the walls for guests. I was far too nervous to sit. I stood beside her. Verlin came in and started greeting the approving guests. He peered around the room, searching for me or for Linda because he knew I'd be with her. As soon as he pinpointed her, he hurried over and sat for one brief moment in the chair next to her. Leaning toward me, he whispered, "Suzanne is around the back of the house. Her father, Vern, will walk her in on his arm, so you get ready." He held my hand, seeking reassurance. "Please don't let me down with all these people watching. Be strong. Come through for me." He kissed my cheek. "I make it up to you, I promise." No, he won't. He always promises things like that, and that's that. But I think she's going to behave this time. Behave. Because at this point, it's just like she doesn't have a choice. I'd already been to the bathroom twice, but I was nervous after being pregnant. And being pregnant made it worse. I had to go again. When I was finished, I checked my hair in the mirror. I hadn't worn mascara on purpose, just in case a tear slipped out. I looked at my pretty reflection and then spoke consolingly to myself. "It's okay, Irene. Be good." I took a deep breath. Then I turned the doorknob and stepped out into the crowd, prepared to do my religious duty. It's so sad that these women are forced to do this over and over and over again. I held my head high and greeted guests as I obediently walked across the crowded room and took my place beside Verlin in front of the fireplace. He smiled at me approvingly as he nervously shuffled his feet and wrung his hands. About half the crowd had never witnessed a plural marriage before. The curious and inquisitive guests moved to the sides of the living room, making space for the bride to enter. The air was filled with expectancy. The procession began as the piano intoned, "Here Comes the Bride." Suzanne appeared, holding the arm of her bald, round father. It doesn't say round, it says rotund. I don't know where I got round from. Who smiled at Verlin with satisfaction, clearly feeling it an honor and privilege to give his daughter to such an important man. Although our other church of about 100 families never grew very large, and all the years it limped along dramatically, those who participated thought it was a gift straight from God, as thus their highest priority, as it presented Verlin, was highly esteemed. In unison and in rhythm to the music, Suzanne and her father took their halting steps towards us. Her 2 younger sisters held her train while the beautiful Virgin glided along. With her short, platinum blonde hair and white dress, she looked every bit of an angel. Joel officiated. "Do you, Sister Irene, take Suzanne by the right hand?" And I said, "I do." Then I placed Susan's right hand in my husband's and moved to one side so she could take her right place beside him. It was my duty to fade into the background Now, here I was, an intruder again. I reminded myself repeatedly that I was no more than an invited guest at my own husband's wedding. I'd done it all perfectly. In a few minutes, it was over. Roland kissed the bride, and I quickly disappeared into the kitchen. The occasion belonged to Susan. I kept busy serving cake and punch so I wouldn't have time to think. I joked and smiled with other plural wives and wedding guests, hoping the bride and groom would hurry up and leave so I could too. Come quick if you want to ride, Verlin said, interrupting my internal conversation. Suzanne has gone home to change. I need to go to my mother's to get my suitcase. Roland praised me as we drove 3 blocks over there. Things went well. I appreciate it, Irene. I just hope my other wives will love Suzanne as you do and make her feel just as much at home. Roland checked his suitcase one final time to make sure I packed the change of clothes he asked me to wash. Hey, what's this? He answered, picking up a white envelope. He knew it was my handwriting, and it clearly annoyed him. I just wanted to say goodbye, that's all. Who knows when I'll see you again? Besides, there's no reason for you to be mad. Well, I'm glad I found it here. I wouldn't want Suzanne to see this and think that you're feeling bad. That might ruin things for her. She's trying to be romantic. Good grief, I didn't even realize the camera doesn't turn. She's trying to be romantic, right? And do something nice for her husband. And that's what he has to say. The dam inside me broke. Ruin things for her? I screamed. Some damn 15-year-old punk marries my husband and I've ruined things for her? He left before he had to hear anymore. I couldn't believe how furious I was. Plural marriage was supposed to refine me, help me eliminate my envy and jealousness. But it wasn't working out that way at all. The price of godhood was simply too high. If this was any sort of preview of my life to come, I wanted out. A week later, Susan and Verlin returned home from their honeymoon. He left her with me at my house in Ensenada until he could decide where she would live. Having grown up with Verlin's daughters at Colonial LeBaron, she was excited to see Donna, Laura, and Rhea again because they could be her sisters' ages, and they're friends. Like, they grew up together. That is the weirdest crap. They were her friends. I often felt that part of her decision to marry Verlin was the fact that she would get to be around her girlfriends permanently. Donna, on the other hand, was not so thrilled with the situation. Who would be? That would be like one of my friends marrying my daddy. No, thank you. What in the world? She confided in me that it seemed weird that her dad married a close friend who was only 2 years older than her. It's almost as if daddy has married his own daughter, she said. Donna, you're a smart girl, because that's exactly what it's like. And it's weird. She didn't understand the male perspective that younger wives could be more easily trained to a man's liking. Listen to how that sounds. How predatory does that sound? That we can train you to our liking. I'm not a dog. I'm not an animal for you to train. What are you talking about? But that's what they do. The first few days Suzanne spent with us went well enough. But soon I learned that Verlin bought her some new shoes while my only pair was all worn out. I was more than jealous. I was downright mad. Then I saw them. Suzanne was old enough and wise enough to sense my feelings. She almost cried, explaining to me how Verlin insisted she buy the awful matronly shoes of his choice rather than some like all the other young girls were wearing. She felt much better after we joked about how men like nothing better than keeping their women barefoot and pregnant. My heart went out to this child bride because I so powerfully felt her disappointment. I knew she basically made her last free choice when she chose to marry my husband. Because of her genuine innocence, I felt a protective love for Suzanne, a motherly bond of concern. I would never again be jealous of her. She not only won Verlin's heart, becoming his favorite wife, but she also won mine. So now 15, the 15-year-old is his favorite wife. I wonder how that's going to go with Charlotte. Morning sickness and inflamed veins in my legs made it impossible for me to care for 26 kids a single day longer. Not only was I exhausted at times, I thought I was losing my mind. Love or no love, I resigned. Because she was pushing herself for the love of her husband. But it didn't matter what she did because he already had his favorites. Verlin didn't appreciate this at all. He reprimanded me for even thinking such things. Crushed at his... Wait, thinking what? That she wasn't going to have love or that she didn't want to work anymore? Crushed at his lack of understanding, I demanded he move me back to Los Molinos, even if it was into an old rundown trailer house again. I needed peace, quiet, and a place to rest before my impending delivery. Lucy quit working in San Diego and moved back into the big brown house with her 7 children. Charlotte took her 9 children to live with her in Tijuana. Verlin decided the best thing to do was to build me a house in Los Molinos. A truck loaded with lumber, drywall, and other materials left Ensenada 2 hours before we did. I had 9 of my 10 kids with me, plus I was big and pregnant. We took the bedding, clothing, and utensils we ended up with after giving Lucy and Charlotte their shares and jammed into our camper for the 2.5-hour drive to the Baja colony. My friend Betty invited us to move into her home. She insisted I not fret about any inconveniences to her and her own 7 children. Verlin assured us it would only be a few days before he finished a small 3-bedroom home for me and the kids. The cement floor had been poured the week before, so Verlin Jr., and a friend, Rodolfo, worked on it from sunup till near midnight. In just 6 days, I moved in. The bathroom had no fixtures. The floors had no carpet or tile, and the walls still needed to be taped and painted. They wired the house hoping we'd have electric power down the line because the children were so noisy and I didn't want to impose on my friend any longer. I camped in the unfinished house for a week until Verlin returned. He brought a load of used furniture for us he brought at garage sales. A month later, my home was taped and painted on the inside. It had been 4.5 years since I left my new home in the mountains. I could hardly imagine having 3 bedrooms for just 10 of us. But the flies from the neighbor goat pen swarmed in through the screenless window, and the sand fleas kept us all scratching until we had bloody sores. Then there were the chilly ocean breezes that made it so difficult to dry clothes in the damp air, so it ended up feeling like a LeBaron home after all. Luckily, I was allowed to take another short vacation to San Diego to visit friends. While I was there, they brought me a pair of navy blue maternity pants and a beautiful red and navy blue smock. These were the first store-bought maternity clothes I ever had. Y'all, she has all these kids, been through all these pregnancies, and this is the first time she's getting something for herself that is bought and nicely paid for, that won't fade like her other stuff did when she washed it. These were the first store-bought maternity clothes I ever had. It felt so good, like it belonged to the real world. When I got home, Verlin rebuked me for wearing pants. He proceeded to buy me the usual 2-piece of cloth, which I made into the usual 2 maternity dresses. What's wrong with pants? I just want to know. What's the deal with the pants? But I disobeyed him and wore my pants and blouses as my best outfit. One advantage of his being away so much was that he couldn't keep close tabs on me. A couple of months later, I left my entire brood in Donna's care while I went to Ensenada to have my 11th baby. I went a week early, thinking I have it a day or two. Instead, I went 13 days over my due date. Beverly let me stay with her in the 1-bedroom apartment Verlin had built for her as an add-on to the big house. I enjoyed peace while resting there, but I was very worried about leaving my children for so long. I wondered if they were warm enough at night. The cold, foggy April weather concerned me. At 5 a.m. on April 10, 1969, a hard contraction suddenly gripped me. I waited, watching the clock, to try to time my next contraction. To my surprise, none came. This was new. At 8 a.m., I had my friend Juana drive me to my sister-in-law Janine's place, 3 blocks away. Janine would examine me to see if you think I'll have this baby today. I said, I've only had one huge contraction. After examining me, she warned, my golly, you better get to the doctor quick. You're fully dilated. On our way back to the big house, we stopped at the winery, and Juana ran in to make an emergency call to Dr. Cortez. Before she finished the call, my pain started fast and furious. She told him to come immediately. We rushed back to Beverly's. I gave instructions as Lucy and Beverly helped Juana prepare my bed for the delivery. I only had been in labor for 20 minutes. Doctor or no doctor, the baby was coming. I bet it wasn't long, because don't they say the more births that you have, that your labors tend to not be as long? Let me know if that's a myth, but that's what I've heard. Charlotte had a Verlin Jr. Lucy had a little girl named Verla, and I felt I should also have the privilege of naming a child after our husband. So I decided to put an A on the end of his name and call her Verlana. Verlin arrived when the baby was a week old and took me back to Los Molinos, where I found my kids all sick with colds and fevers. Lacelle had an abscess ear which broke. I just delivered our 11th baby, and I had all these sick children, but I couldn't have any extra time with Verlin. It wasn't my turn. That seems kind of weird, though. If the kids are sick, he can't help and take care of the kids? That's ridiculous. He just dropped me off at my house and then left to spend the night with Esther, who hadn't seen him in almost a month. The kids were overjoyed to see me again, especially Donna, who had shouldered all the responsibility while I was away. I put the new baby in the crib and then let the 5 youngest ones crawl in the foot and sides of my bed to get some comfort and hugs that were long overdue. Before long, Verlin decided he needed me to help Lucy care for the big brown house in Ensenada and the many guests we constantly had there, so I moved back. All she is his workhorse. All she is his maid and the person that he lays with to keep having kids for his kingdom. She can't never just be. Irene, when you gonna leave, girl? Verlin's cousin, Theron Lenny, maybe it's Theron, was like a brother to us. He gave Verlin work in Las Vegas painting business for over 16 years. No other member of our church gave more money to it than he did, or was more willing to make whatever sacrifices might be necessary to forward the kingdom of God. His first wife, Helen, and 9 of their 11 children lived in Los Molinos. They only saw him on the weekends that he and Verlin could make it down. On May 10th, 1969, I was washing clothes out at the Ringer washer when I saw the car of an old friend, Lane Stubbs, come zooming over the dusty road faster than usual. Fear surged through me. Instinctively, I knew he had bad news, and I started running toward him. I wasn't quite to the corner of the house when Lane jumped out of his car. Come with me quick. Theron's been in an accident. The ambulance has taken him to the hospital. Slipping off my wet clothes, I quickly changed, leaving instructions for Donna to hold down the fort. Lane and I rushed to the hospital. I found him unconscious, bound with cords at his feet and wrists, tied securely to an iron cot. I felt relieved to see he wasn't all black and blue and swollen like other car accident victims I see. I knew that before long, he would wake up and I'd be able to take him home. He thrashed around, almost expelling the needle that was inserted into the vein in his wrist. I stroked his hands, hoping to calm him. as I watched the glucose slowly drip down the tube into his arms. Nobody worked harder or was more on the go than he was. I didn't think he ever got enough sleep. Knowing he was unconscious and couldn't hear me, I said, Theron, you're finally going to get the rest you deserve. 7 other men were in cots in the same ward. To the left of me was a man burned so badly I wasn't able to guess his age. He constantly moaned and cried out in pain. I struck up a conversation with him in Spanish, but then a chubby nurse approached his bed with gauze and bottles of medicine. She asked me to please step out of the room while she treated his burns. Oh, that's painful. I patted Theron's cold feet and walked out reluctantly, not wanting to leave him alone. I sent Lane to phone Theron's son, Terry, in Las Vegas to inform him about the accident. We also needed money to bail his 16-year-old son, Dale, out of jail. In Mexico, the driver in any serious car accident automatically goes to jail, and he'd been driving. Theron's daughter, Debbie, was also in the accident and was in the woman's ward with a badly gashed foot. I knew Theron had health insurance, and I wanted to send him by ambulance to San Diego where he could receive quality care. I talked to Dr. Martinez about it, but he wouldn't even entertain it. He's too badly injured to be moved anywhere. If you'll be the responsible party, we'll take x-rays now and do everything we can for him here. I signed the release forms. Then we stepped out into the hall as Dr. Martinez started explaining the next procedures. The banging of gunnery drew our attention as 2 nurses wheeled it out of the men's ward and off down the hall. A sheet concealed a body on the gurney. I said gurney. Someone just died, sighed Dr. Martinez. I hoped it wasn't the poor man with all the burns. We returned to the men's ward, hoping to take Theron for x-rays immediately. To our astonishment, his cot was empty. Turning toward the burned man, I asked, where did they take him? He died moments after you left, he said. I ran into the hall, unable to comprehend such a disaster. We needed Theron. The church needed him. How could God take such a vital man? I pounded the wall, weeping as I prayed. No, God. No. No. Please don't let it be true. Dr. Martinez put his arm around me. He's gone. Get a hold of yourself. He's now at peace. I don't like when people say that. Don't tell me so-and-so is at peace. Not right away. Contrary to popular belief, most of the time when you lose a loved one, that's the last thing you want to hear. Because the pain in itself is enough to try to comprehend. Don't give me that other stuff. Let me say that myself. Or work your way to it. But I just don't like that statement. Because the truth is, let me not go there. I just remember people telling me that and how badly that made me feel. And I don't like that statement. My head was spinning. I had to go look for Lane. I waited on the curb in front of the hospital, hoping for Lane's immediate return. Brown-skinned strangers passed by, nodding to me respectfully and saying in Spanish, Happy Mother's Day. I choked with emotion. Poor Helen. I dreaded sending her the tragic news of her husband's death, especially on Mother's Day. I didn't notice Lane until he was right beside me. I threw myself into his arms and wept. He's dead. Theron's dead. Lane stood there like a statue. Lane, you gotta be the one to call Terry back, I said. Tell him that his father's dead because I can't bear to do it. He shook his head. I can't either. I just called him and told him that Theron would be okay and that we had things under control. I'm not calling him back. You'll have to. Good goodness gracious. Do these men do anything? I just can't. I can't be bothered with it. Theron's daughter, Sherry, answered the phone, surprised we called back so soon. Sherry, I began. I have bad news. I'll never forget her sobs. I joined her. I was sick that I was dumping my emotions on her, but I loved him as family. I, too, was devastated. Lane got his father-in-law to drive the 3 hours to Los Molinos to inform Helen and the rest of her children of the sad news. I rushed home to clean house, cook food, and prepare beds for mourners who would arrive shortly from the States for the funeral the next day. That evening, I returned to the hospital to tell Debbie her father died. While I was there, Verlin arrived home for the weekend. Our daughter Donna told him the sickening news, and he came and found me at the hospital. Immediately, he insisted I go with him to the mortuary. I don't think he's dead, he said hopefully. God needs him too badly to be here. There must be some mistake. Verlin cringed when he saw his naked body. He shook his head in disbelief, then said with finality, "He's dead all right. He's dead for sure." Outside the morgue, we sat in Verlin's car, and he let his tears flow freely. Theron was the best friend I ever had, he lamented. He was just too perfect to live. Oh, how I'm going to miss him. On September 2nd, 1969, I returned home to the big brown house with a renewed spirit. Verlin had taken me to a movie, then out to eat Mexican food. It was a rare occasion when we could celebrate like this alone. For once, I wasn't pregnant. I felt like I was being courted. Verlin was most attentive. We held hands during the movie, just enjoying being together again. His thoughtfulness eased my burdens. I don't trust it, because he always does this and something comes up, but let's see. I felt for the first time in years that our relationship might improve in spite of all the problems. He kissed me before we got out of his truck. Then he hugged me and said, "I could never keep going without you, Irene. I really love you for all you do for this family." Not I really love you. It's conditional. The same way it's conditional with Cody and his wives. It's conditional. I love you. I really love you for all you do for this family. The next morning, Verlin unloaded a large cardboard box from the camper of his truck. It contained 30 more pairs of used shoes he had purchased from the veterans' thrift. His throng of excited children grabbed frantically for a couple of pair each as he dumped them onto the living room floor. Verlin left me my $50 weekly allowance, which he finally raised from $20 because of the numerous children, then bid us farewell early Sunday evening. He was rushed because he wanted to drop by Charlotte's home in Tijuana and visit with her and her kids before he crossed over into San Diego. 4 hours later, he unexpectedly returned. I knew when I saw him that he was the bearer of bad news. "Who is it, Verlin? Who died?" "Your mother. She died of a heart attack in Montana." "No, not my mother. How could it be? She's only 59. When I arrived at Charlotte, she told me the news. Your brothers are on their way to Montana now to bring your mother's body back to Salt Lake where she'll be buried." Verlin hugged me. "I'm sorry, but I don't think you need to go." You don't want her to go because you want her to do everything at your house. This is some crap, y'all. Why even come back and tell her and not allow her to go? They'll probably just have a graveside funeral anyway. What do you mean I don't need to go? She's my mother. You won't keep me from going. I can't have Lucy quit working just to tend to your kids. Well, you can tend to them. They're your kids and I'm going. I cried, convulsing between sobs. You've always gotten to live around your family. Have your mother constantly nearby. Why didn't you let me go see mine this summer like I wanted to? Now she's dead. Roland got up to answer the door. Two of Joel's wives, Gay and Priscilla, were at the door. "Where's Irene?" Gay asked. "She's too embarrassed to come out. Her mother died and she's crying because she can't go to the funeral." "What do you mean she can't go? Are you crazy?" Gay asked. "Well, she's got responsibilities. There's no one else to tend to these kids." Both women rushed to console me. In a matter of minutes, it was decided. They would both stay and care for my kids until I returned. Within 20 minutes, Verlin and I went out the door. As we drove to Tijuana, I begged him to accompany me to Salt Lake so we could attend the funeral together. "Irene, you pushing it, girl. Because if it weren't for those ladies, you wouldn't be going. Just take your scraps." My family was bitter towards the LeBarons, and I wanted him to go with me so I could walk proudly at his side and make a statement to all my relatives that they better accept him. "I can't go. You know I have to work. I'll put you on a Greyhound bus in San Diego. From there, you can go to Las Vegas and then ride with your sister Becky and her husband. We stopped at Charlotte's just long enough for her to try and find me something decent enough to wear to the funeral. She donated a navy blue and white plaid sack dress that was a size too large for her. She also gave me a pair of nylons and a purse and loaned me a pair of her shoes. When I arrived in Salt Lake, my older brother Richard informed me that Verlin had called. He made arrangements to attend the funeral after all, and he was en route to Salt Lake with my daughter Donna and Verlin Jr. My heart was in my throat as Becky, Richard, and I drove to the funeral home. We tiptoed into the viewing room. Our 3 older siblings, Douglas, Roger, and Irma, were already locked arm in arm in front of Mother's casket. For the first time since we were children, we were united, and it had to be at Mother's funeral. As we viewed her body together, I felt a great wave of homesickness for them. I was shocked by how pale and old our mother looked. She'd been such a beautiful woman in her youth. I hoped to attain her wisdom and strength one day. Now I wanted to cry out to her and ask her for forgiveness for being so stubborn and make her understand that the things life had taught me. I wanted to tell her I knew she suffered alone all those years. In my inadequate way, I wanted to tell her I loved her, but it was too late. Life seared me with the realities Mother couldn't get across to me back when I wasn't in the mood to listen to her. She gave me a legacy of knowledge and courage. Her wisdom and beauty would stay with me through the years, reminding me of the debt I owed her. I still choke up whenever I sing her favorite song, Painting the Clouds with Sunshine. I often hear her lovely voice singing a song I heard no other person sing. When I pretend I'm gay, I never feel that way. I'm only painting the clouds with sunshine. It was Mother who taught me to laugh and at life. And throughout the years, I've had the opportunity to paint countless dark clouds. And that's how she ends the chapter. That's a weird way to end it. This Verlin has pissed me off. He has really, 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 really pissed me off. I don't remember if I showed y'all some of these pictures. I know I showed you Verlin and all of them. We got Lucy, Charlotte, Aunt Ray, and me, and 13 of Verlin's children. Above and below, it's the first 3 wives, Charlotte, me, and Lucy. So y'all see the wives, the kids, then the ladies. I won't try to give away anything. From left, Lucy, Beverly, Charlotte, Verlin, Esther, and me in 1965. And then Verlin with his first 5 wives and 20 of his children. What an interesting group. What an interesting group of looking wives. He definitely don't have well, I couldn't say he had a type because they were asked. Try to do this because of the glare. Everybody looks so happy, don't they? She has a picture of the promised land in Baja California, Mexico, where she lived with 10 children after selling the home in the mountains. That's her trailer. That was supposed to be paradise. Above is the Utopia of Baja, and then below is one of the windmills that she was telling us about. The awful windmills. And that was Verlin and Hector. Okay. That's it for now, y'all. This is something else. Ooh, I done lost my page where I was at. Anyways, that's it for now. I just don't understand how these ladies did it. I don't get it. To know that you're stuck like this and you just have kid after kid after kid with broken promise after broken promise after broken promise. It just it's crazy. But we'll see what comes next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time.